Our next important exercise is learning how to mix neutrals with our prismatic colors. We're going to mix 5 different neutral tones, each one using a different combination of colors. We can start with any one of them, but let's start with our bright yellow color that looks like this. Okay, so we need to mix 3 different colors in order to create a neutral quite often in this case, because this is a prismatic color. It's not a secondary color. Let's add some kind of blue to it. Let's try adding Prussian blue. Okay, we have a green. And now let's cancel out the green by adding some kind of red. Ooh, notice that this red is very, very strong. That's good to know. Alizarin is a very, very strong color. Colors have different tinting strengths. You need to know how much of one color to use in another to create a balance. So we've got a purple now. Let's add a little bit of yellow to it until it cancels out, getting a little bit more neutral, as you can see. Let's add a little bit more yellow to it, keep adding yellow to it, and then before it starts going to green, I need to use my Prussian blue to cancel it out. You can see the mixture is quite subtle. Now I'm adding little by little. And here we have something that looks pretty close to gray. There we go. Okay. So that's going to be our first color mixture, gray. So I'm going to try to make all these grays look almost exactly the same, even though I'm using different mixes of color. Okay, so I cannot repeat the colors I put down here. So this is a mix of cad yellow light. What do we use for our red? Alizarin crimson, alizarin, and our Prussian blue. Okay, now we cannot repeat these colors. They're no longer an option. So now let's start off with our gamboge. Gamboge, yeah, sure, why not? Let's start off with gamboge. Like this. Okay, now we're going to turn it green by adding which color? Okay, we can't use Prussian blue anymore. We need to use cobalt. Okay, we made green. Now let's use alizarin crimson's off the table. Let's use a little bit of cad red, dark. And let's add a little bit of cobalt. This kind of exercise develops really good sensitivity to color, to value. Pretty important. I'm trying to get something that's pretty close to that. So it's a little bit greenish. If it's greenish, we're going to add a little bit of red to it. What do we use? We use the cad red dark to cancel out the red. And we're getting closer here. You guys see that? It's getting closer. Little by little, it's getting closer. A little bit on the greenish side, add a little bit more red, add a little more blue, and that is pretty close. Let's see how well we did here. Not too shabby. Okay, there's our next neutral. Could use a little more blue in it, I think. This will give you a really good idea of how strong the pigments are, by the way. You'll notice that Prussian blue, a little bit stronger than cobalt blue. Definitely wash the alizarin. It's a very strong color. This is actually alizarin hue, which makes it that strong. The original alizarin was a softer color, but unfortunately it is not light fast and is now rarely used in watercolor paint. Okay, let's do another one. Let's use a different yellow. So these 2 yellows are off the table. We used gamboge. No, we used Indian yellow, excuse me. Now let's use the gamboge. Before we do, let's remember what colors we used here. So we used Indian yellow, we used cobalt, we used, let's see, what else? Cobalt, blue, and cad red dark. By the way, if you don't have this many yellows, don't worry. There are lots and lots of ways of mixing neutral. I'll show you guys how in a second. Okay, so we're going to start off with our gamboge, and now let's cancel out with ultramarine blue. And our only red left, other than Indian red, our cad red light. A little bit purplish. We need to add a little bit of yellow to cancel out the purple. Let's add a little bit more blue. We got there pretty fast. All right, here is our next neutral. Okay, now let's say I don't have that many yellows. All I have is one yellow. Not to fear. Lots of other ways of making neutral. How else? By using our secondary colors. So we can take our red and start mixing it with green. Now I know I've used my reds here as well, but these are different kinds of neutral colors. Okay, let's use this kind of red here. And now let's pick a green to cancel it out. What kind of green do we need? We need one that is a little bit on the warmer side, I think, to cancel out the color. Now we might have to make some adjustments here. We can also add a little bit of blue to it. This is going a little bit greenish. So what we're going for is just different combinations of colors mixing up neutrals. Going neutral, going neutral. I'm trying to keep these more or less the same value. Here's another neutral. Okay, so they're pretty close to each other. Do about 5 of these. You could do more. I can spend all day doing these. Now notice that this is a pretty difficult way of mixing your neutrals, right? That requires a lot of balancing. There's a much easier way. It's a much easier traditional way of mixing neutrals, and that is by mixing brown and blue together. So here is the traditional way to mix any kind of neutral color. It's good for shadows, it's good for any kind of darks, and it's an excellent replacement for black. 2 ways of doing it. You can use burnt sienna. This is my kind of dark orange, and cobalt blue. This is going to give you a very delicate gray. This is very good for skin tones. Excellent when you want soft grays in clouds and skies, that kind of stuff. Nice mixture. And you can see it balances out very quickly. Right? Or you can use burnt umber and ultramarine blue. This will give you a slightly darker gray, so this is good for darker tones. You can see they cancel each other out very, very quickly. And in their darkest form, goes about as dark as you need to go. Creates almost a pure black. In fact, a pure black. So, a bunch of different ways of creating neutrals. Practice doing that. And then we'll do one more exercise, and you'll be ready to go to mix whatever color you want. Okay, so I've done the neutral mix exercise. So I've mixed up a bunch of different neutral colors, each with different color combinations. Now I said at the beginning of this exercise not to repeat the color. Okay, that's obviously not true. You're going to have to repeat the color, the same color sometimes, so long as each color combination is different from each other in 1 or 2 respects. Perfectly fine. Next step is our final exercise where we're going to actually start matching colors. So here's how it works. I've sketched in 6 little boxes. You can do more if you want. And I'm going to look around the room, pick a color, and try to match it in my little swatch. Now this is tricky. Color is very relative. I don't really know what one color is until I've got a color next to it. However, this is a really important exercise. And here's how it works. I'm going to look at a color. In this case, I've got this kind of dark, slightly dull red of a pen case, of a pen box. I'm going to look at my palette and ask myself, what is the closest color to it in my palette? I think probably the closest color is alizarin crimson. Now, I'm looking at this color. It's too bright. It's very, very bright. I've got a prismatic color. The box, my pen box, the pen case, has a little bit of dullness to it. How do I soften this color a little bit? Well, I could add a little bit of green to it. I definitely can. I can add black to it, which I'm going to avoid. Let's see if we can add a little bit of green to this and soften the color. Am I going to use this yellowish green? No, because that's going to make my mixture warmer, and my color is a little bit on the cooler side. So I'm going to use a little bit of this green to soften the color just a touch. That looks pretty close to what I'm looking at. Now I'm going to put it down, and there is my first color swatch. So just below my pen case is a wooden materials box. It's made of mahogany. I'm going to try to match the wood color. What color is it closest to on my palette? Probably this raw sienna color. Now, sometimes you have a perfect match. Sometimes, rarely. Okay, so I'm looking at this color, and I'm noticing, gosh, this is a little bit too intensely yellow. The wood in my box is a little bit softer, a little bit more neutral. All right, how do we soften this? Well, what is the opposite of yellow? It's purple. Let's add a little bit of purple to the color by adding a touch of red. It could be any one of these, by the way. It could be alizarin, it could be this. But generally speaking, if I'm trying to make the color cooler, I'll use cooler versions of the red as opposed to warmer colors. It's going to get me there faster. All right. Now let's add a little bit of blue. What kind of blue? Well, I don't want my mixture to turn greenish, so I'm going to avoid Prussian. I can use either cobalt or I can use ultramarine. But since we're leaning towards purple, I'm going to use my ultramarine because, if we remember, ultramarine mixes a slightly more vibrant purple. Can I use my other blues? Yeah, it'll just take you longer to get to the right mix. Alright, that looks pretty good. I think if I just lighten this mixture a little bit, it's going to get me pretty close to where I need to go. Okay, I managed to match this. Now, what colors am I looking for? I'm looking for colors that are complicated, so don't mix up. I've got a perfectly red clamp. That's going to be easy to mix. I'm looking for neutral colors. So for instance, I've got a bottle, a plastic bottle, that has kind of a neutral, slightly cooler gray on it. Now, lots of different ways of mixing gray. Easiest way of mixing gray is with some kind of brown and blue. So I'm going to use burnt umber plus blue. It could be either one, like this. Let's neutralize it so it actually goes into a kind of cool gray. And then I noticed that my gray is slightly purplish. Let's add a little bit of alizarin crimson to it. I'm going to be careful. Right now that I know my alizarin crimson is really strong, I'm going to make sure that it doesn't overpower my mixture. Here's my next swatch. Probably needs to be a little bit lighter. Going this way, like this. Looking around, I've got a leather pen case. I've got lots of pen cases around. I'm in my studio. I notice it's a little bit more orangey than my pen box. I've got a wooden box here. This is a leather pen case. Let's start off with burnt sienna. Okay, this burnt sienna is actually quite close to the color, but I noticed that the leather in the pen case has a little more yellow in it and is not quite so bright. So we've got this kind of orangish yellow. How do we soften orangish yellow with some kind of blue? And that looks pretty close to the color of my leather pen case. I'm looking around. I've got a blue paper towel. Let's mix it. So I'm going to start off with a blue. What kind of blue? Well, I noticed the paper towel has a little bit more turquoise in it. Let's take a look. It might be Prussian blue. It might be cobalt blue. Let's mix a little bit of Prussian blue into this. And then I notice, gosh, this color is too strong. It cannot be this strong. I need to soften it. How do I soften it? With orange. Right, so I can mix up an orange, but because I don't have an orange here, maybe the closest thing to orange would be burnt sienna. Burnt sienna is just a darker version of orange. So I can throw a little bit of that in there. And now if I dilute this, that's going to be very close to my paper towel color. So this is an exercise you can do endlessly. Go around your room, just start picking colors. Look, you can even match a skin tone. Right, skin tone might be mixed lots of different ways. We can start off with red oxide and a little bit of yellow ochre, dilute that. And skin tone obviously is not all one color, but that might be really close to the color of my skin tone. Right, another really important exercise. So I think after doing all these exercises, color wheels using all of your different yellows, different blues, different reds, then placing all of your colors in their respective spots on the color wheel, mixing your neutrals using different color combinations, and then doing your color matches. You'll have familiarized yourself with the palette. Oh, don't forget to make a little swatch like this and label your colors. You'll have familiarized yourself with the color palette and be able to do a better job mixing up whatever color you want.